We're thrilled to welcome Clifton Anderson, one of the foremost trombonists and composers in jazz today. Known for his rich personal sound and exceptional melodic compositions, his music embodies the depth of his remarkable career. From his Harlem roots to early mentorship by his uncle jazz legend Sonny Rollins, to performing with icons like McCoy Tyner and Stevie Wonder, his journey has been extraordinary. So join us as we explore his experiences, artistries, and the stories behind his incredible contributions to the world of jazz. So, Clifton, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Abe.
Yeah,
It's a pleasure to be on with you
yeah, my
today.
and pleasure to meet you as well. So we're beginning the new year 2025, and we just wrapped up 2024. So kind of catch me up with what's going on for you, what you're looking forward to doing musically this year, because we're just starting off the year, and I'm sure you've got some great things in the works.
Well, yeah, I should say for those viewers that don't know too much about me, I'm an independent, what we call an independent artist, and that means that I'm pretty much self-contained with everything that I'm doing. I'm not signed. I've done several CD recordings, and after the first one, after the first one, I decided that I was not going to sign a record deal with a label again, not a standard record deal, So, I do lease, I lease products now, which is what I would recommend most artists do anyway in this environment, because the record labels are not what they used to be. And it's because they're not making the kind of money that they used to make, and artists obviously are not making the kind of money that we used to make. Um, it's very limited what a record label will actually do for you. And the industry and the music world has changed so dramatically from when I first had interest in music. It's a very different place now. It operates very differently.
Yeah, there's
So,
people who even have their own, records who are signed, and they still have to go into their own pocket to make the music come
it,
to that.
right. This is why I always recommend when I talk to younger musicians in particular who are they're very enthusiastic about signing with a label. And I'm telling them that there's no guarantee from signing with any record label that you're going to advance your career at all. Um, and because what record labels can do right now for you is maybe advance you some money, but they're not, as you're saying, they're not even giving you a full budget to complete your product, and to be competitive, to be able to have a product that sounds competitively on par with what they themselves are doing for the artists that they want to back. And that number of artists is very limited. It's like being in the NBA. It's like you have a lot of great players, in neighborhoods and in the streets that can play. Everybody's desire is to join the NBA, right? But there's only like 1% of those players get to the NBA, right? Doesn't mean that the ones that don't get there are as good or better than some that are in the NBA. It means that, it's a very selective process. And that selection is based on other people's agendas, really. It's not based on just solely how well you play, how what your musical concept is or whatever you're doing. It's based on a lot of things that are out of your control. So, having said that, you need to be able to move forward in a way that is really productive to your career and to your agenda. You have to understand that, there's a glut of musicians out here now. It's not like it was back in the 70s. You know, the 70s, you had musicians, there were a lot of musicians, but it's not like now. I mean, now you have conservatories churning out, graduating musicians every year, and everybody's moving into the same space. So it's like a lot of crabs in a barrel. Everybody's trying to, do the same things in the same ways. And it's just not, it's not a paradigm that really works really for you personally. You have to be dedicated to your music, and you have to have something to offer. So in terms of you have to see yourself as a commodity in a marketplace. And this is the only way to really be able to go forward. If you want to have a career, most musicians I see today are their career is the gig, and the gig is not a career. The gig means that you are what's the word? You can be dropped, exchanged, manipulated by the marketplace, however the marketplace wants, unless you can offer something that's really unique or different or that's your own. So to
Yeah.
answer your question, what I'm trying to do, what I'm doing, what I'm moving forward doing is what I've been, involved in over the past several years. I'm looking for new opportunities to record music and to perform music. But I'm looking at those kind of things in different ways now. They have to have something attached to them. It just can't be a job. It just can't be a gig. It just can't be, a job for a certain amount of money. There have to be other things that are attached to those jobs, to that work. Part of it for me is a spiritual thing. Part of it is uh, being associated with people and or organizations that I see that are more interested in the music itself, and not just on the bandwagon of pimping out or tricking out, musicians and music,
If you're going to
which is
do
what's going
this, you've got to be
on.
resilient. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not for, I don't want
Exactly.
to say the weak, but because there's so many musicians and the pool just gets getting larger, you've got to find a ways to do what you love. And your outlook will certainly change when starting out more and more and more and more.
That's right. When I started, it was really funny. Monty Alexander told me, he said, man, when I did my first record, he's on my first recording as a leader. And he said to me, man, I'm so happy to see you jumping in the pot. But he said, just be, I hope you understand that, you're not going to make any money doing this. You're not going to make, it's not about, it's about making enough money to survive and maybe to be okay, but you're not going to make any kind of money. It's not like doing pop music or something,
Yeah,
so
it's interesting. Like you might go see somebody play at a world-class venue, and you might think they have it all. But after that gig, they might not play a gig in a place like that for quite some time.
exactly. Today's business in live music um, is hinged on booking agents, and I wouldn't even say booking agents. I've never had an exclusive booking agent. So, I mean, from my whole history, which was kind of, I never really understood that. There was a period when, I had product out that was released, international global releases through distributed through Universal Music. I mean, I've had a couple of substantial releases, and I would think that uh, I would be someone that a booking agent would be interested in, especially when I was getting such great live reviews, from audiences and from critics and things like this that were coming to my shows at that time. But it never really happened for me. So I was kind of pushed into the area that I'm moving through now, almost, by force. I mean, it was almost like, I didn't have any choice but to start to learn how to operate on my own, in this business. And a lot of times I tell other musicians also, sometimes the thing is money, really. It comes down to money. If you have something that you're dedicated to and you're committed to, the only thing that is preventing you from doing what a record label or manager or some people that are involved with you are doing is, you understanding the business and you learning how to exploit yourself personally. And you'll probably do, once you learn the business, you can probably do a better job of that than a record label or anybody else will do. You know, you're in charge. You know exactly what you want to present to your audience, you know. Now, whether you have the money for it or not to do it, that's another story. That's always a problem. That's always an issue, you know. But for me, I'm trying to pursue my music. I'm not playing with that many. I found, you know, I spent most of my career. I started playing professional jobs in the early 70s, in the mid 70s. And from that point up to, I would say, probably the 90s, uh, I was, you know, I started working with my uncle in 1983, but I was still working with a lot of other people. I was still doing a lot of other things. So, you know, I spent a good portion of my career helping other musicians make their music sound good, or trying to. At least that was the idea. I was on board because I wanted to be part of making whoever it was that I chose to work with, helping them make their music come off, you know. So I'm at a point now where I need to get my music off. So you know, I'm moving forward, and you know, I also realize that, you know, I have an ability to write melody, write tunes. So I mean, I have a stack of music, you know, that I need to get documented, that I would like to get to the public, you know, in a variety of ways. So this is what, and also a lot of different kinds of music. I want to do some things with strings, with orchestras, you know. I have a lot of different things in the mix that I want to get to. And I don't think, I see now that the way the climate is out here, I have to be dedicated to do that, to just be involved with that. So I'm not working with that many other artists right now. I'm not doing that much outside of my own leadership. You know, I do, you know, I just did something with, I just did a track with Rodney Kendricks, who's coming out with some of the pianists. And you know, I do select few things here and there, you know, but the trajectory is really on for me, you know,
The
on my material.
trombone, yeah, the trombone is an instrument. It's a beautiful instrument. Um, there aren't as many jazz trombonists as there are jazz saxophonists or jazz
Yeah,
pianists. I
yeah,
mean, that's just a fact. So I would be thinking, when someone plays the instrument as well as you do, the record labels would be willing to say, oh, no, no, this is an instrument that's part of the history of the music. Granted, there weren't as many, you know, the jazz messengers would not be the jazz messengers without the trombone.
yeah, that's true. This is
And
true, but yeah, but you know, you and I are musicians, we're music lovers. There's not an instrument that I will say I don't like. I'll say that, you know, there's certain instruments that, unless they're played a certain kind of way, I might not care for them that much. But the instrument themselves, and the ability of what that instrument can do, there's no instrument I don't like. But we have a lot of people in this industry that don't like the trombone. They don't like the flute. They don't like the vibraphones. You know, they're instruments that they just don't feel can command attention. And because they feel that they cannot command attention, then they feel the rest of the public is not interested in them. So they don't have, you know, I see, I'll see a record label sign 15, 20 saxophone players and not one trombone player, you know, or maybe just one trombone player, you know. So we have to live, the trombonists, we have to live in a world where we're always fighting for uh you know, fighting for some kind of position, some kind of presence in the industry, you know. I've gotten to the point where, you know, I don't I'm not trying to teach. I'm tired of trying to teach people what to do, what I feel, you know, their job can be, or if they have more vision or insight or ability to understand the potential and the possibilities of, and it's not just the trombone, like I said, the variety of other instruments. The only people who who suffer from this are the public. The public doesn't get an opportunity to hear enough variety in what they're getting, not only on the instrument, but in what people are doing. You know, the marketplace gets hooked on to somebody who has a successful record or who can draw a certain number of people into a club, you know, and that's kind of it. You know, they choose not to get behind anything else, and so you have to create your own audience, and you know that's how you're able to survive out here, you know.
Well, no, hearing
So
you say that is such that's so great to hear. You have to create your own audience. If you,
mm,
you know, because you really can't be relying because there's so many things people don't know about this industry, whether it's you have to pay to play at certain places, rent it out, or some people just come from money, period, and they can do whatever the hell they want to do.
exactly.
It's
Well,
all
you
an
know,
illusion.
it's so funny now. I'll give you a quick example. I had a record out several years back. I'm trying to remember which recording it was, but I thought it was a great recording. Personally, I thought it was a great recording. I don't say that about not only other people but myself. You know, I'm not saying that my I thought my playing per se was so extravagant,
It
right?
was a
I'm
good recording. You were happy with it.
recording was a
Yeah.
great based, you know, especially particularly based on what was on the marketplace. So, you know, and at that time I was like a real follower of jazz radio. You know, jazz radio has always been very friendly to me. That's the one part of the industry that has been friendly to me. So this particular recording, it was like in the top five or four, you know, had gone up the charts. And there was somebody, I don't want to mention the name, but there was somebody that is associated with a famous wealthy family. And I didn't know at that time, you know, I just saw the name and I was wondering who I never heard this person's work or anything. And that person's recording kind of shot by me and went above me, and my record never advanced past this.
So you didn't
So
see it like at all before? Like it just kind of came out of nowhere?
no, it came on the charts, but it moved up the charts pretty quickly. And I never heard of the person, you know. This is like, you know, and they were there. And so I went to investigate and I went to listen to the record. And, you know, I saw a few of my friends were on the record, you know, playing on the record, people, you know, the musicians I knew. But I listened to the recording and I was like, wow, you know, this is like, you know, top five, you know. And it stayed there for a minute, you know, stayed there. I don't know how many weeks, maybe a couple of weeks it stayed up in that top five already. My record I think was at number five or number six. It never got past that. And this record got up there, stayed there for a minute, and then just disappeared. And so I said, well, wow, well, this is really interesting. You know, this is very interesting. The other thing and that was one of the recordings. I think that was a record that I did, came out on an independent label. And the recording that I did before that, what was very interesting about the business is that the recording I did before that was signed by Universal Music. It was distributed worldwide. And when that record came out, which was a good record also, but it wasn't as good as the one that I'm talking about. And that record took off like hotcakes. I mean, and I was very interested to see how the industry treated that record, decided to treat that record, which was to me obviously not as good as the one we're talking about. But you know, I got, you know, nominations for trombonist of the year. I got all of these accolades from that record. And I said, well, the record was good. And I appreciate all that attention. But this record is quite a bit better. It's like, you know, it's like a follow-up that's like a lot better. And I had to fight every step of the way for that record to get. But I'm saying this, I'm saying that the reward was in the fact that, you know, that record that I'm talking about, the one that I thought was better, got attention. It got a lot of attention. It got me a lot of it got me some fan base, that I didn't have before, you
Yeah.
know.
Do you think that we, as jazz musicians, we need to, I mean, the world is becoming more politically correct. As you know, I'll give you an example. So, like, I was doing a lot of playing down in New Jersey in the Cape May and Wildwood area. It's way South Jersey. I'm not, you know, in by the shore. And I was at a gig and doing like a lecture, and someone was like, "How come you don't play at the Cape May Jazz Festival?" And I just had to, and I said, "Ask them. I have no idea." You
I
know,
would be wealthy. I would be wealthy if I had even 5 cents for every time somebody said, "How come you're not on Newport Jazz Festival? How come you're not at the Cape May Jazz Festival, Saratoga Jazz?" Every festival you can name, people are asking me why I'm not on there.
when people, does that make your blood boil? Because like when that person asked
Well,
me that, I was just like, "Ask them. I don't know." You know.
it did at one time, you know.
Mm,
It bothered me because my standard for what I felt why I should be on those festivals is different from the people that book those festivals, what they think
mm,
is the appropriate thing for them, you know, and their festival. So once I realized that, you know, there's a whole lot of things that are involved in that. Most of the people on the business side, I've realized in this industry, they have their own agendas, you know, and some of what they say is true. It's difficult. They're concerned with artists that are popular at the moment, you know, that they feel can draw audiences to them.
yeah.
But they're kind of different than they used to be. Years ago, you had at least some promoters that were willing to take chances on artists that were not, you know, as well known or, you know, didn't have as high public profile. And 9 times out of 10, when they took a chance on that artist became much better known because they had a great show, you know, they had something to offer. There's a singer, Rochelle Farrell, and I remember Rochelle Farrell. This is a time when I was working with Sonny. We were in France, made one of the major festivals in France. It was either Nice or Antibes Jazz Festival, and the promoter was telling me, "This girl, have you ever heard of this girl? We got this girl to come in because I think Dee Dee Bridgewater, somebody couldn't do their night, so they had to find somebody just to sit in that night, and they got this girl, Rochelle Farrell. She was unheard of, right? So after when she performed, they're freaking out because of how good she was, and nobody knew what she could do, and nobody knew anything about her. And here comes this unknown person. She gets up on the stage, and she presented a really good show. You see, so that's the problem with the industry. I have a problem with musicians, quite frankly, now with musicians and the industry as well. You know, I think that a good portion of the problem that you and I face and other musicians face that are really dedicated to this music, I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we've handled ourselves in this business. You know, it's a generational thing. You know, you have young musicians who always come along, they want to be heard, they want to be seen, right? They'll work for nothing practically. They'll accept they'll accept the kind of contracts and deals from the industry that clearly are not in their favor or not helpful. I should say, you know, it's one thing to contract something singularly that's not in your favor necessarily, but if this is a process that you're doing over and over and over again, uh, that doesn't, what does it do for you? What it does is it brings down everybody's standard in the industry. So if you're going to go out there and you're going to work a gig or you're going to sign a record deal and they're going to tell you, oh, this is a 360 deal. We want some of your merchandising. We want some of this. We want this. We want that. We want your master. What do you have at the end of the day? What have you done? You've met their agenda because now they have your name in their catalog. You know, if through your hard work you end up blowing up, they have a product on you, which you have nothing to do with at that point. Nothing, right? But they continue to make money off of you. They're taking percentages of your merchandise. If you're out here as an independent artist selling your own merchandise, they want a part of your merchandise. What do they have to do with your merchandise?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah, well,
so
it's
we fall into these traps, all the time, and it's almost impossible for us as a group of of artists, musicians, to get out of it, but we keep going for this okie doke that we need to stop. We need to shut it down, you know.
well,
Uh,
it's to play this music, you've got to be, I get, you really got to be focused and I guess in a good place. Um, but we're always fighting something as jazz musicians. There's
mhm.
always, this is a struggle that a lot of people deal with, which is kind of ironic because we want to change the world with this music. We want to open up people to the possibilities, but at the same time, we're all fighting something in the industry at the end of the day.
Well, this is something to consider. We live in a world where in certain parts of the world, artistry is revered. Um, Very small pockets around the world, it's truly revered. In other areas, it's liked and accepted, and will be supported to certain degree. In the United States, it's not really revered.
That's
And I'm
true.
talking, and as a result, the consciousness of people, I'll speak about the United States in particular, because I think we're at the worst end of this at this point. But the consciousness of people, I found, um, people don't really value music as part of what they feel that they need to support, what they need to really understand the significance of it and how it affects them day to day, because they don't see that. They don't see that. They've
And
been
and this is
indoctrinated.
American art form, right? It's like,
Yeah, yeah. What we're talking about, we're talking about jazz music, but they've been able to do this across the board.
mhm.
And as a result, we're taking the biggest hit on it, you know. But in general, people, what you ask. I do programs where I go into schools to teach young students about jazz music and music, and
Beautiful.
I find that the first thing I have to do is I have to spend time teaching them about music. They have their idea of music is you push a button on an electronic box, and sometimes I realize that they've never even really heard. Some of them have never really heard an organic instrument. So when they hear an organic instrument, they're freaking out.
Yeah.
Their ears are assimilated to electronic sounds, you know. So we have a we I mean we have a real major problem. But if you look at the world, you look in the United States and what's going on here, we have a major problem socially in society on so many different levels. And this is part of what musicians are fighting. Actually, there's a spiritual aspect to what we
Fight to the
do.
death.
Yeah, this is more than just playing notes and getting up on a bandstand. That's representative of something, and it's a very difficult task. It's a very difficult task to try to deal with. But unfortunately, I think that we've been moving it way in the wrong direction for a long period of time in this business, and we're in a really capitalist-based country where everything has now become about. It's always been that way, but I mean, it's like it's out of control. It's magnified now. Everything's about money, and artistry is really being lost. Um, the perception of an audience to understand what they're listening to is almost gone. You know, uh, I've heard some people. I've gone down to listen to some people that the industry is really hyped up on at some clubs. I've done this several times. I've gone down and I've sat in the back of the room and I've listened to what this person is doing. And I mean, these people are getting. Some of them are getting press, all over the place and accolades. And I go and I listen to them, and the audience is like, wow, wow, going crazy. And I'm sitting there like I'm in the Twilight Zone, you
Yeah.
know, because I'm like, they're okay, but I mean, they're not that. You know, they're not that. But the audience seems to think that they're that because that's how they're being presented. And the audience is just going along with this whole, dynamic of what this artist is and what this artist is bringing, which is something that I've had the fortune to be around the people that a lot of artists today are trying to emulate and replicate.
Well, humans are
So
also very easily influenced too. So,
yes,
so when I was in France, I went to a jazz club. It was clear that I was the jazz musician listening to the jazz musicians. So I was like clapping after every solo really loud, you know? And if I didn't clap, because I didn't clap, I'm like, I wonder if I don't clap right now, will people not clap? And they didn't, you know?
yeah, right, right.
I was like, this is crazy, you know?
Nobody has an understanding really of what is, including a lot of musicians. A lot of the young musicians don't know, uh, unfortunately, and I don't know this is going to change. I happen to be, and I know I'm going to anger some people about this, but this is why you don't see me being interviewed that much. One of the reasons I think
I'm honored.
is because um, I have a whole different take on academia. And I feel that academia in many ways has destroyed this music. Now, I shouldn't say destroyed it, but it has not advanced it or helped it in ways that it needs to be it needs to be nurtured at this stage of time. And it's because I think the way that it's being taught is not the way that you can really learn this music. I went to a conservatory. I graduated out of a conservatory here in New York City, one of the major ones. And I didn't learn well, I should say this. When I was going to that school, that school didn't want to have anything to do with what we call jazz music, right? And I was there with several great musicians, and we were forced to just hang out together all the time. There was no jazz curriculum. There was no jazz department in the school. Yet here we were. There was a singer who went on to get a lot of fame. Her name was Angela Bofo, right? She put out several really big recordings on the GRP label at that time. And she was very well known doing worldwide tours and everything. But we were in school together. The other person that we were there with, well, there were a few others, but of note that you would know was the pianist Kenny Kirkland.
Oh
So,
my God, of course,
so
geez.
Kenny Kirkland and myself and Angie, we would travel around the city to try to find, things to get involved with. And we did. There were things to get involved with. There was Reggie Workman's Muse at the Muse out in Brooklyn. There was Barry Harris's cultural theater down on 8th Avenue. There were places that we could go to hang out, to not only hang out, and a lot of these places we would hang out in, but you wouldn't even play
Yeah.
because the musicians that were there were established musicians. And I met so many musicians uh, that were like, I would see on all these records, and I was hanging out with them, and it would be, maybe a few months before, and they would say, "Oh, you want to sit in on this? You want to play here? You want to do something here?" You
Now,
know.
Clifton, this has been amazing. I wish we're gonna have to do part two because
Okay. All right.
we're running out of time. But I just want to say thank you so much for for doing this, and I hope we can do part two.
Yeah, yeah, we can schedule a part two, and whenever you want, man, we can talk some more. I think the
Awesome.
information that we have should be out there in the ether.
Oh, yes, yes.